Welcome to the podcast Life After Addiction and Indictment. I'm your host, Steve Cloward, and I spent most of the last decade and well over $100,000 on coaches, consultants, masterminds, and events trying to figure out how to reclaim my life again. On this podcast, I'm going to share the tools, the tips, the tricks, and the hacks that allowed me to forgive myself so that I could reclaim my life again. I'll be interviewing experts in mindset, leadership, entrepreneurship, sales, marketing, branding, and so much more. I'm glad you're here. Sit back and relax and enjoy the show.
Let's go! This is Life After Addiction and Indictment.
Hey, welcome to Life After Addiction and Indictment. Appreciate you taking the time out to listen today. And I've got a fantastic young lady today to join me. And she's got a fascinating story. She's doing some incredible work to really make a difference. She's got a husband who also has dealt with some addiction issues and spent some time in prison. So we're going to talk about that today. So welcome to the show today, Nikole. Appreciate you taking some time.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it, Steve.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And it's Nikole Thompson. I apologize I didn't get in your last name there. But so Nikole, let's talk to me a little bit about your experience with meth and kind of what got you started. Maybe, as you got through recovery, you realized, the reasons that you were using and then what got you to stop.
Okay. Well, my husband and I met and married 24 years ago. I was 20 and he was 36. He was clean and sober and had custody of 5 of his 6 kids. And I brought in 2 little boys. And we had a pretty decent marriage for the first couple of years. God blessed us with a construction company. And with it came a lot of unsavory characters. My husband kind of reached back into his past and brought in some influences that were not quite on the up and up.
At this point, were you sober?
I wasn't using. I was clean. It's so much easier for me to explain why I used the first time, just through our divorce and separation. So, we were married for a couple of years. The construction company money started coming in, unsavory characters in our front row. And ultimately bad company corrupts good morals. And so soon there was infidelity. My husband was cheating on me. He eventually started dealing drugs. Then he started manufacturing drugs and we separated. Neither one of us were using, we separated. And I always share this song because, thoughts do lead to our actions. And so I was drinking, I was going to the bars. I was 24 years old. By this time, I've got 3 kids, 3 different dads, going through a divorce. And there was a song that came out in 01 or 02, and it was a rap song called Housewife. And the lyrics said, "You can't turn a hoe into a housewife." And in my mind, I thought, okay, my husband didn't want a good housewife. He wanted a hoe because he left me for meth girls that were partying, girls that were younger, girls that I felt were prettier, skinnier, and wilder. I was at home taking care of 8 kids. I was not very fun, if I'm going to be honest.
That's more than a full-time job doing that.
I called him up and I said, "Hey, I know that you are doing meth now." He had gone from cooking to actually using after I left him. And I said, "I know you're using meth. I want to get high." And he brought the meth over and I was instantly addicted.
Was that the first time you used?
Yes, we smoked that very first night. And he was in and out of my life that whole summer. This is back in 02. And so his relapse, this was in June of 02. And by October of 02, he was arrested facing 96 years in prison. So for 4 months, he was in and out of my life. He would show up, be there for a couple of days. If you've ever heard anyone's meth story, there's absolutely no accountability, reliability, keeping time, schedules, and I was a mother of 3 and I worked full time. So there would be times where I would expect him to come back and I, in the madness, needed the drugs to stay awake and he was nowhere to be found. And so eventually I ended up seeking out another drug dealer, and He ended up going to prison. Like I said, he got arrested in the state of Illinois. We were living in Indiana, and he got arrested in Illinois, and he ended up getting 8 years, which was the minimum was 6 years, the maximum was 20, and they gave him 8. They were like, we'll plea bargain with you, but we're not going to give you the minimum. So he got 8 years. And while he was in prison, I just spiraled out of control. Even when I talk with my kids now, who are 26, 25, and 21, because they were with me all through that 3.5 years of my addiction, I thought I was a functioning addict, which I think is what most people think, because I didn't lose my kids, because I did have a job, because I wasn't homeless, but I was a horrible mom. I was there's no excuses for it.
Right.
So that 3.5 years, I got so bad, like every day towards the end, I would say about year 3 is when I started using the needle. So for the first 3 years, all I had done was smoke and snort, eat it, whatever. And then by year 3, I had gotten in a relationship with a guy who was on the needle, and there's pressure. And so by the time Tony got out of prison, when he showed up at my door, here I am about, 140 pounds, 130 pounds. I just look like death. I've got, blown veins in my arm, track marks in my arm. And I'm wearing a pro-gay shirt. I'm actually living with a woman. Okay. And so he had no idea the depths of my addiction. He knew I was using, he knew I was partying, and he knew that I was being immoral, that I was sleeping around. He just didn't know how far I had gone.
Were you guys interacting at all while he was in prison with letters or phone calls? Or
I went and saw him probably 5 times maybe. And he would write me letters all the time and always sign them, love, always and forever, your husband, Anthony. And I would show these letters to my friends making fun of him. And I was like, he's such an idiot. We're divorced. Like, why is he signing them, love your husband? And then he later told me that he was standing on Romans 4:17, calling those things which be not as though they already were. He was expecting that God would restore our marriage. He was believing that. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what his letters were all about. But because they were filled with scripture, Steve, I pitched them. I mean, I still have them. I threw them down, but I just didn't. I was bitter and I was angry, and I was pretty much, my attitude was, screw you and the God you want to serve. Because what kind of God causes us to get divorced? We had 8 kids. They got spread everywhere. One's in a group home, one's in boys' school, 3 are with an ex-wife. My kids, horrible 3.5 years. And in my mind, in the middle of my dark valley, I'm mad at this God that you want to act like it's such a great thing that you got prison time. Because when we got married, we were sober. When we got married, we were both good people, but being good is not good enough.
That's right.
You actually have to fill your house and know what you stand for and why you stand for it. You have to be ready to say no before it shows up in front of you. And so he showed up at my doorstep, and I was sure that he was going to give me a lecture. Because isn't that what Christians do? Isn't that what hoity-toity, Jesus freaks?
Too often.
Well, unfortunately, the Pharisees that misunderstand Jesus Christ's love and sacrifice, that it's not just for them, but it's for everyone. It's for the hooker. It's for the drug dealer. It's for the, husband who abuses his wife. It's for every single broken person out there. Jesus's love and grace. He wants it for everyone. And so when Tony showed up, I was worried that he was going to judge me, potentially take my kids, give me a lecture. Which those thoughts, I now know where they came from and why there was such a big push to keep us separated. But our son, Freddie, came running in. He was 5 years old, and he said, Mommy, please let Daddy come in. And so he came in, and we went to the kitchen, and Freddie was just so excited to see his dad. I don't think he had seen his dad for maybe 6 months to a year. And so he was just daddy, daddy, daddy. And I was not high. And I could see the way he was looking at me. I thought he was looking at me in judgment. But, you know, he's later told me he was looking at me just feeling disgusted with himself because I was in the state I was because he led me there. He was the spiritual leader of our home, regardless whether he took that authority serious or whether he even knew he had that authority. Yeah. But I was exactly where he led me. And so that was the weight that was crushing him. Right. And so I think that I'm going to get this big lecture. So all of a sudden I scream at our 5-year-old and I'm like, just get the bleepity bleep, bleep, bleep in the other room. Just go the bleep away. And Freddie starts to cry. He's 5. He just bawling. Wow. And Tony's like, Nikki, stop. Freddie, come here. And like, he's got his hand up in my face. He won't let me talk. So now, of course, I'm sure I'm going to get it. And he picks Freddie up and he just says, Freddie, mommy and daddy love you. And mommy and daddy want to hear what you have to say. But mommy and daddy have to talk first. So mommy and daddy need you to be the obedient little boy that you are. We need you to go in the other room. And when we're done, we will come listen to you. And I was like, what just happened? And he tells me, Nikki, this world is going to beat our kids up. And it's our job as the parents to call out the good and speak life over them. And like that day, I say Romans 2:4 was on display for me. The kindness and goodness of God that draws man in, that causes us to want to repent, because I wanted what he had. He had something. No one had ever had that much peace around me. Normally I could bring them into my chaos. You talk to a meth addict, they will spin your head with some dumb stuff. And you'll just be like, oh my, like chaos is just the world. And he made me want what he had. And I didn't know it was Jesus until I started spending time with him. And, it's just been, so here we are 16 years later. I didn't get clean that day. I wanted to be clean and I kind of white knuckled it, and so that I would have a week of sobriety. But then as soon as it seemed like so he was on parole and in Illinois and I was in Evansville. And so free drugs would show up, free parties, free this, free that. And basically it was the enemy not wanting to let me go.
100%.
Like it was that bondage. And, there's a story about crabs. If they're in a jar, they'll like rip off other crabs' legs other than let them crawl out. Yep. That's what I envision when I picture Evansville, the spiritual warfare. Like it is just angry people not wanting to see anyone get out alive. And by the grace of God, I got out alive. Like I relocated.
So cool.
It is. Wow. Me and my 3 boys moved where he was paroled out to. So May 29th of 2006 was the last time I ever used. Got almost 16 and a half years clean. Yeah.
That is freaking so great. Awesome.
Yeah, no, God is so, and it's Jesus. Like, yes, so much of it's my husband, and he's so humble. Every time I'm like, thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for coming to get me.
Your kid and the way he handled things to you. I mean, talk about, he was the powerful man.
Yeah, exactly. And so like when we speak and when we share, he always talks about men, you're leading your kids, you're leading your wife. It, whether you want it or not, it doesn't matter. You will either lead them to darkness or you will lead them to light. And every time I speak, I say, you have the opportunity to be Jesus, his hands, his feet in your actions. The way you handle situations will either cause someone to want what you have or be like, there's nothing different. And so you're either salt or you're not. And so I try to live my life that way. I want to be that moment that Tony gave me to everyone I come in contact with that feels hopeless. Because I felt hopeless.
Oh,
Steve, if we're honest,
trust me, I know that feeling. It's brutal. Yep, it's the worst.
So and now here we are 16 years later. We've been running Celebrate Recovery for 5 years at our local church. We planted a church in New Orleans. We lived in inner city New Orleans for a while. That was a wild ride. Cool. That was a hard season.
What took you there? Was it work or-
So a pastor friend called and wanted Tony to co-pastor and for us to come help plant this church.
Okay.
And the pastor friend, it's funny, he was actually part of the CPS investigation, Child Protective Services, during our first marriage, like as the drug dealing and all that stuff started popping off. And so we had no idea that this guy was a pastor when we met him back 23 years ago, 22 years ago. So he knows me while I'm on drugs. He's the only one that recommended I took Tony back. He was like, I believe Tony is sincere. I've read his letters from prison. And then he even later told us that he had visions of him and Tony sharing a pulpit together. So we lived up by Chicago for 9 years. And then out of the blue, this friend called and said, hey, I'm starting a church, evangelical, inner city New Orleans. How would you feel about you and Nikki moving down here? So, New Orleans, the recidivism rate is the highest, meaning obviously people that are going to reoffend because you got to break the cycle.
Yeah.
The addiction rate is so high. Obviously, fatherless homes, joblessness, all these things, the state of poverty. And so my husband, a convicted felon, for the past 16 years, we've had a very successful lawn care business. He's done his own, we've done our own lawn maintenance. He started building decks. He does, God opens doors for us everywhere. I was 6 months clean and God opened the door for me to start cleaning for doctors. We were cutting down a tree in this one lady's backyard. I needed to use the restroom. And the boys would pee up in the dump truck where the wood chips went. Well, I was not going to use the restroom up there.
Right.
So I knock on this lady's door and she lets me use the restroom. She goes, do you clean? Now I'm not even 6 months off the needle. Okay. She goes, do you clean homes? And I'm like, thinking to myself, I clean my house. Like, that's all I thought. And I said, well, yeah, of course I do. And she was like, we are looking for a hard worker and we've been watching you drag those limbs. And I ended up cleaning for her and 2 other doctors, like getting keys to condos up in Chicago, cleaning penthouses.
Wow.
One of the doctors literally wrote us a $3,500 check to buy our first lawnmower. And then my husband worked it off.
No.
And Tony attributed that.
Is cool.
He said, God holds the hearts of kings and queens in his hands and he turns them whichever way the river bends. Like my husband always quoted scripture to everything in the beginning, which just really helped us reprogram our minds. Like instead of saying love you to death, we say I love you to life. Like it's just so funny. Some of the things you say.
What language, and when you pay attention to words, it's crazy.
Yes. Yeah. So, and my boys are blessed because my 26-year-old's pre-med. He has his master's and his bachelor's. He has his bachelor's in kinesiology, a master's in public science, and COVID has messed him up a little bit, but he's married with 2 girls, New Orleans. So New Orleans did give me all 4 of my biological grandchildren. Now, keep in mind, I have 9 kids married, and so I have 12 grandkids total. So after New Orleans, 5 years ago, we moved back here to Kentucky to get closer to the adult children.
I got you. Okay.
We wanted to be closer to them, closer to the grandkids,
Absolutely.
not back in Evansville where we were in addiction. But here's the thing, Steve, it's so easy to say on Facebook and make it look rosy. But if someone doesn't get to see you live out your life, they have no way to know whether you're fake or whether your fruit is real.
100%. That's right.
So we wanted to come back so our kids would see there is a way to have a better marriage. There is a happy way to live life. Being sober is fun. It is not miserable. And, my life does not suck by any means.
So much
I
better.
love my
I know.
life.
Yep.
And so I don't wake up with the morning after regret. I don't have all that shame and guilt. And I remember stuff like I get to keep my grandkids for weeks on end. My kids can count on me to come be there for a labor or delivery. Or when Alex needed to take his МCATs, I said, I can take off work. I work at a church. You need to study for a week, I'll come down. Like it's a good life. And you couldn't afford that when you were on meth. You couldn't just go somewhere when you were on drugs.
That's right. Man, you guys have a beautiful story, and I'm sure it's just the tip of the iceberg, but man, that is beautiful. I mean, to just see how you started, introduced by your husband. What was his name again? I want to say is it Rick?
Anthony.
Anthony. What did I think? Rick? Anyway,
Anthony. My husband, I call him Tony or Anthony.
okay. And then he goes through what he went through and why he came back and approached you is not typical. And
no, not at all. Not at all.
And like you say, as you're trying to white knuckle to get sober, and you're getting pulled, like you use that example. To me, it's 100% a spiritual situation. It's good and evil. Yes. And
absolutely.
Obviously, it's all what Anthony was doing where he's at. The last thing they wanted was for you guys to come back together with his power to influence you the right way, bring you back to now, see what you guys have done. You've written a book last year or two. You started to, I'll have you tell us a little bit about that in a second, but you started Celebrate Recovery. Talk a little bit about that, and then let's talk about your book.
Okay. So when we moved to Kentucky, my cousin, so she had come down to New Orleans, her and her husband, several times. They would go on cruises and they would stay with us. And we kept telling her that we felt we had done the Bible study, You and Me in Light of Eternity by Francis and Lisa Chan. And they just talk about how a lot of times as Christians, you can go stagnant. Like just being, copacetic with just going to church on Sunday. And we need to be winning people and helping them find freedom from what we found freedom from. And so we started having this hunger stirred up inside us. And so we were doing good in New Orleans. My husband had a fantastic job. And my cousin said, hey, I've got a mother-in-law suite. I will let you stay there for free. It's an hour south of Evansville. We were going to buy a camper so we could travel and share our testimony. Here's the thing, men make their plans, God directs their steps. We bought that camper to travel and share our testimony, and for 3 years we did nothing. We launched Prisoner to Preacher. I mean, and I don't mean did nothing. We spoke at recovery houses locally. We launched Celebrate Recovery. We did lots of ministry here in Kentucky, but I think that God needed to refine us. Like you don't just get to go travel the world and like nobody knows you. You got to have a little bit of credibility. Yeah. Even though we had both, I had 10 years clean at that time, 5-6 years ago. I had worked in different churches. Tony, we had done the church plant, and we had worked behind the scenes in ministry. We hadn't really been pruned. And so working at the church for the past 5 years, we moved to Kentucky. We meet with the pastor to share our testimony. And he literally says, I would love it if you guys would pray about starting a Celebrate Recovery. This city has had it 4 or 5 times, but it's never kept. It's never stuck. Different people have tried to start it. They've never got the ball rolling. So I really want you guys to pray about, will you start one for the church? And we love Celebrate Recovery, because here's the thing. People go to the altar all the time and get saved. Okay, go sin no more. Good luck. Hope you don't have too many trouble with those thoughts. You know what I mean? But that's not it. You have to have a discipleship process. And the church we're at is so intentional about building relationships, and Celebrate Recovery is so intentional about, that's what we need. That's what breaks cycles, generational curses, bad habits, like brokenness, when you mentor, disciple, teach your children, train them up. And so, we started working for the church. I started running a little pizza shop, which the church owns like a strip mall. And so the town I live in is about 30,000 people, pretty small. And, on the weekends, we would have these parties in this little pizza shop, and it would let me meet people from the city. Well, you get to see, I've got pink, and, at the time I only had pink hair. I didn't have the purple. But so people approach me. They don't, my husband's ordained. He studied nonstop the Word of God in prison. He Smith Wigglesworth and just Kenneth Hagin, and he just absorbed the Word, and did Greek and Hebrew Bible studies. and just spiritual warfare, like just every day. And that's just a blessing in and of itself. So when we started working at the church, like when people would approach me here at the pizza shop, I'd be able to, you can tell when someone's struggling.
Oh, yeah.
And you can tell when someone needs, so I get to hand them my business card. It says, here I am with my, let's see, oh, there's the camera, hot pink hair. I get to hand them my business card. It's got my cell phone number on it. Celebrate Recovery. We got a free meal. We got free childcare. Your kids get to play in my fun, funky tunnels. Come on out. And so we typically have had pre-COVID one of the largest recoveries in, I don't know, maybe even a 60-mile radius. Like, not anything we've done, totally Jesus. Yeah. Like, it's all Jesus, but it is a safely manufactured environment. So like typically what you see at a McDonald's with tunnels, I've got about 3 times that in the middle of my church. It's a fun for tunnels, a ball pit. And so the kids get to play, the moms come and bring the kids. I worked on different grants to get meals provided. And so for 5 years now, we did shut down during COVID. And so for 1 year, we were video only. And we are just now building up momentum. I think we started back maybe in March of last year. So, we were out for 1 full year because of COVID. And so now here we are, a year and a half reopened, and we're just now getting to a place where I can consistently say I've got at least 10 kids, maybe 15. I can say consistently I've got, 15 women or so that I work with, mentoring, discipling. We're working to rebuild the men's group again. I've got a school teacher that teaches the lessons to the kids. She does the celebration station. So your kid is getting to learn the same step that you are. And so, for instance, denial to an 8-year-old might mean, hey, Linda, did you clean your room? Yes, mommy, I cleaned my room, and everything's in the closet or under the bed. Yeah. So you're denied. So like the lessons, real life, but at their level. Yeah. And then they bring about how, mommy's working on it too. And so let's all try to be better.
Sorry, could you say that's cool.
Oh, sorry, my phone wanted to talk.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
But so we've been doing that for 5 years now. With the Prisoner to Preacher launch, we launched the 501c3 at the same time. And we got involved in a court custody case with a young girl that had some abuse issues. And she got into foster care. That's what kind of geared us towards the foster parenting. I've worked with several parents, moms working on getting their kids back. We've done court supervised visits as we've watched moms and dads process and get new lifestyles and coping mechanisms and make healthy choices. And right when I moved here, as we were working on Celebrate Recovery and coming across all these people in addiction and basically almost empty nesters. We only had our baby in the home. He was homeschooled. He graduated high school at 16. He went into the Air Force at 17. Oh, wow. So he's been gone now for 4 years. So basically we only had him the first year or two we were here, but God really started talking to me about you are what you put in. You are becoming what you're continually beholding. And so many of my moms struggle with parenting, but they're not thinking about what they're letting their kids listen to. They're not thinking about what they're letting their kids watch. And so working in Celebrate Recovery led me to writing 50 Shades of Truth, where the word truth is made up of lies, meaning the media is pushing lies. It is the opposite of who God calls us to be. And it is pushing a instant gratification, swipe right, hook up. It doesn't matter how many partners you have. It doesn't matter, like, if it feels good, do it. Who cares? And this is costing our children. Like, I just had a mom reach out to me. Her 6th grader is struggling with vaping. They have, smoking used to be gross. It smelled, it made you stink. You didn't really want to do it. Yeah. Well, then the cool kids did it on the corner, but it was still, 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
We're talking about 10 and 11 and 12-year-olds getting a hold of
It's
vapes
insane,
now.
yeah, it's crazy.
And so if we don't do something to take back this younger generation and to let them know who God called them to be, I mean, there's some very serious ramifications that we could be facing. And
no
so
question. Yeah,
that's
I
what my
actually-
book is about.
That's great. Because it was a couple of 3 years ago or a little more that I realized, like my youngest just graduated high school, last year. And
Okay.
it just seems to be all the things you're talking about are so true, as well as like, the smartphones and all these things. I think it also conditioned parents in a way that it made us parenting easy, because we didn't have to parent in a way. Like
We didn't have to fool with our kids because we just hand
because
them a phone, they got their own device, and we're like,
that's
there you go.
obviously polluting their minds in so many ways, and they're not obviously getting taught in the influence that we did growing up.
Yeah.
It was like a babysitter for us in a way.
Exactly. Parents have
Which is
become
terrible.
lazy.
Exactly.
Parents
That's
have
it.
become lazy,
Yep.
and they justify it
So
because,
true.
well, in my book, I talk about caps. So Charles Capps says that this hurt generation is because the 40 and 50-year-olds, they worked hard for everything they have. And
Yep.
so what they did is they created an entitled generation by hiring housekeepers, by hiring people to cut the grass. So first off, their first offense to their children is, in the Bible, there's no word for adolescent. You were a child and then you became a man, a woman, you became an adult.
Yep.
How did you know you're an adult? Grandma, grandpa, mom, and dad said, you man now, go out there and work.
That's
You know what
right.
I mean? But that was 200 years ago. And so now 50 years ago, all of a sudden we got these parents that are like, oh, you don't have to cut the grass, Johnny. I'll take out the trash. You don't have to do anything. Oh, by the way, here's a phone and a tablet, even though you're only 4 years old. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. And so we've created children that are going to actually live in our basement until
Exactly.
who knows
Yeah.
when, if
Yeah.
we don't change what we're doing,
So true.
if we don't change the enabling that we have done and called it love.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's kind of like what my husband and I noticed. And then, we just threw in my story. We threw in the story about, how I had never done meth. We're divorced. That first time we're separated, that song comes into my mind. And all of a sudden, what should have been a very normal thought got turned crazy. Oh,
Yeah.
you weren't good enough being a good housewife, taking care and raising the kids, but I didn't have any truth to say, you know what, that's a lie. I was a good wife. I don't need drugs to make me a better person. But
Yeah.
instead, I think, oh, I need to get high and become the hoe. Like that wasn't healthy at all.
Right.
And so
that's crazy, but I
but
get it.
it was the
I
thought,
get it.
and it
Yeah,
led me
I
down the
get it.
rabbit trail.
Yep.
It was the thought. And then next thing you know, I'm addicted to meth, and then, it's all downhill from there, buddy.
Yeah, that's
So
incredible.
so we put it in the book. At first, we weren't going to write the book from my perspective. Like, it's real easy to say, yeah, I'm clean from meth. High five, everyone's happy. But when you talk about walking out of homosexuality, there's a stigma on it. And I was definitely afraid, small town, what my church was going to be like, because I had never spoke about it. And so 16 years clean, I've always talked about meth, but I did not bring up the homosexuality or the porn until about 4 years ago. So I was very
Wow.
nervous about what people were going to say and how they were. And I wanted a book that didn't make me seem like a skank, even
Yeah.
though, real life, I was wild, but I did. So like my spiritual mothers read it. I let multiple people in the church, pastors' wives, read it, because the last thing I want to do is paint a bunch of visual pictures when the purpose of my book is that life and death are planted in all the images that we watch, all
Yeah.
the songs that we listen to. Like there are seeds that are planted. There's a chapter in my book called Seeds. And so everything you do is either for positive, good, affirming thoughts that are going to be
Yep.
planted, or it's negative, bad ones. I talk about in my book Freddie and I sat down to watch a TV show. It was supposed to be family friendly. And the woman, someone says, you know, come on up here, you luscious lesbian, you just won. And this was a family friendly show. And this was in 2016. And I thought for sure when this girl got on stage that she would say, oh, we're not lesbians, we're just friends, because she's a Christian. And she doesn't. She accepts the award, and right there, a seed was planted in millions of girls in their minds, because as a young girl, you're so confused anyway. And if you're in a fatherless home,
no
I
kidding.
cannot tell you how many middle schoolers are struggling with their sexual identity. And that's not who God called them to be.
That's right.
And so, so that's what I want to speak. That's what I really want to speak out against. I love speaking out against the meth, and I love my life free of drugs. I love my life free of drugs.
Right.
But God specifically told me nobody else can share, because, and here's the other thing I talk about in my book. I never had lesbian thoughts as a child. I was never attracted to girls. I never. It wasn't until lesbian porn that seed started being planted. A very violent separation with me and my husband. I talk about it in the book. And Satan twisted all these things, and he made me think I would be safer with a woman, when statistically there is more violence in gay relationships than regular.
Yeah, that's crazy, but I've heard that.
But it's true. Statistically, it is true. There is more abuse in girl on girl or boy on boy relationships than your normal relationships, a man and a woman. And so I haven't started going into schools yet. I see that coming very soon. I just don't know how to. You're
the person for that job, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm definitely ready for it. If anybody's listening and they've got a place, call me, I'll come.
You know, it's crazy. You talk about that chapter with seeds, you know, and it was literally last night. I walk in and my wife's sitting down, and America's Got Talent was on. That's what it's called, right? AGT.
Yep.
And there's this couple, I can't remember, they're dancing or doing something on ropes or whatever, but here we are on regular TV, you know, regular channel, not even a cable channel. And she's literally damn near just got on. I mean, there's nothing covering her ass, like basically a thong. Like I literally said to my wife, can you believe we're at a place that it is 100% okay now to show some girl's ass on TV, and people don't think a thing. I said, can you see how this has just evolved?
It's the desensitization.
Exactly.
It is the desensitization of everyone as to what would have been like shameful, and now that's why I said that, like that swipe right. I don't know anything about those apps, but it is just like, I'm so grateful I got clean 16 years ago. I got clean before video, and I got clean before all this electronic stuff, because there's no proof of what I did. But I mean, I'm willing to share it. Don't get me wrong. But the problem is now, if you struggle with porn and you're carrying this around in your pocket, it's a constant trigger. You know, I talk with my moms. If you're struggling with, like, you're not happy in your marriage, and your husband takes you out to eat at Applebee's, and you're disappointed, but you're watching The Bachelor and you're mad because he doesn't take you on that kind of vacation, be grateful you have a man that has a job that takes you out to eat somewhere. No doubt. You have unmet expectations because they're unrealistic. That's a Hollywood budget.
Right.
And so, you know, fixing our focus is what we have to do. We have to cut out the garbage, be intentional as parents, not be hateful about it, do it in love, tell our kids that's not God's best. You know, there's a reason we don't put lighter fluid on the fire. There's a reason abstinence is still the best for our young kids, because you don't want to be connected to that person for the rest of your life once you have a child, because it's called co-parenting. And so teaching these life skills that have just for 20 years. They've just been missing, and they've been in some Christians' homes, but the Christians have been too busy, I think, trying to not make waves.
I think
That
that's
they
it
have
right there.
given up
Wrote
ground,
that down.
given up ground, given up ground, given up ground. And now it's like, holy crap, like what I do, this podcast would be illegal in Canada. I can help anyone struggling with porn as long as it's heterosexual, but I cannot minister to anyone that's struggling with lesbian porn in Canada. You cannot help anyone struggling with homosexuality, and you cannot talk about being straight.
Well, it's because that's where they want it to go. That's why.
Yeah, well, because they say that it's, you know,
Deteriorate them.
like it's that whatever, you know, I'm completely against what they did, you know, 40 years ago. I'm not going to quote scripture at someone and, you know, shock therapy and all that. That stuff has been illegal. It's still illegal. It needs to stay illegal. Shaming someone doesn't change them. But if someone wants help, I want to be able to offer them help. I want to be able to tell them what worked for me.
Yeah.
Because we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm doing.
You've got an incredible story and you're doing incredible work. And we need more of that stuff. I mean, so,
yeah,
you know, I think it's phenomenal what you're doing. And, you know, and like you said, you kind of haven't spoken about, you know, the homosexuality and stuff. I mean, I get it to a degree, but also, you know, authenticity is what really resonates these days, you know?
Yeah.
And I could sense the passion you have about it because for whatever reason, I think it's because there's hardly anyone doing it, if anybody, and you can make such a big impact, you know? So
when let's see, it has been literally 20 years since I started using meth. Okay. Because my husband will have 20 years clean in October. So right at 20 years ago on VH1, a video came out by this band called Tattoo. And it was All the Things She Said. And it was a Russian video producer who said he wanted to see underage lesbian porn. And that's why he made these two straight girls kiss in the rain 20 years ago, VH1. Wow. That's what led me. That was the very first seed that got planted where I watched it, where something ignited because nothing had ever been there before. I was 24 years old, doing meth, drinking, partying in clubs, being debaucherous. I mean, I was already open to sexual, you know, I was already being unfaithful to my husband. We were separated. He was on his way to prison. So, you know, the enemy had plenty of doors that were open, but I know for a fact, had I not seen that video at that time, that door didn't have to get opened. Right. What are our kids facing today, 20 years later? You just said it. America's Got Talent. She's half naked.
Yeah.
7 o'clock TV shows are no longer blotched out.
Family show.
Netflix is free porn. Like you don't, and then the real porn, what is scarier about it, it has gotten uglier and dangerous and scary and violent. And then when unfortunately kids do get trapped into watching porn and becoming addicted to it, and neurotransmitters and rewiring of their brain, they think it's normal to choke a girl, or they think it's normal to ask for something that is gross and disgusting in the 8th grade on a school bus. And they think that's normal. And the problem is parents and teachers aren't speaking up and saying, yes, you were created for sex, to reproduce, to multiply in the bonds of marriage.
Yeah.
Fire is supposed to be contained, and then it can heat your house. But if a fire is not contained, then it can burn down a forest. And so, you know, we have to start speaking about this stuff.
No doubt. That's 100%.
Because that was me 20 years ago getting addicted to porn. What do you think our kids are facing?
It's so much worse.
And yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah. And it's so easy to get. It's all about convenience. Like you said, you can get it all right here in an instant. And you know, it's a scary time. And
one of my favorite pastors says it's a scary time when your Bible app is right next to your porn app.
Wow. So true.
Like, wow. I mean, the choice you make, That, you know what I mean? It is
Yep.
one button away, right or wrong.
It's crazy, but hey, like you're doing, we just need more people like you and more people to speak up. And we've got to let go of this whole political correctness, worrying about if someone's going to be offended. I mean, that's all
Absolutely.
intentional so that we won't speak, and that's
Yep.
how we've gotten to where we're at. So,
And if someone is happy with their lifestyle, I am not mad at them. Like, do you? But when people want help, I should be able to share where I found freedom.
Right. Absolutely.
And so that's what I plan to do.
Well, that's great. You're
And
already doing
also
great
warn
work. I mean,
people.
yeah, exactly.
you.
Before they
Thank
fall
you.
into it. So
Exactly.
where can people find you, Nikole?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and we've got a ministry website, which is Prisoner to Preacher. And so that's the number 2, but it's all .org, prisoner number 2 preacher.org. And then I've got a website for the 50 Shades of Truth. So it's 50 shadesoftruth.com. Has our email address, our contact info. You can order the book, order shirts.
Awesome.
We're a 501c3. Everything's tax deductible. We do travel and speak. We do a joint testimony. We do individual testimonies. I think there's some videos on both of the websites that have been put up, and so reach out if you have questions, concerns, you just want prayer, any of it. Like, we are here. We're here to serve.
That's awesome. Well, I've got all that stuff that'll be in the show notes, so people can reach out. And I really appreciate you taking the time and keep.
Thank you so much. It was an
honor.
honor.
Oh, it's been my honor. So appreciate it. But yeah, I want to keep in touch. Like to have you come back sometime and, see where things are at, and just so we can keep, putting the word out to try to help more people, because
Absolutely.
you said they're just, with what we've been through the last couple of years, what I believe is coming, even way worse than what we're dealing with right now. It is going to trigger a lot of people. A lot of people are going to just reach out for the wrong things. There's going to be an increase in, domestic violence, all those different things that take place. Yes. And so we need to unite. We need to spread, love and light. We need to, relationships are everything. And we need to have more people like you, where there isn't going to be the judgment, regardless of what the situation.
I love to share this. So Celebrate Recovery is in over 25,000 churches. And so if you go online and you type in Celebrate Recovery, there is a locator, and you can put in your zip code, and it will give you 30-mile radius, 60-mile radius, 100-mile radius. Try a group. If that one doesn't work, go to another. Don't isolate. You can't do it alone. And that's my thing. True. Like, I love leading the Celebrate Recovery. We love traveling and sharing at other recoveries. And it's so important to have that accountability and to work the steps, because the steps are that discipleship process we talked about in the beginning. Okay, I don't want to do drugs anymore. Now, what does that look like? Well, it means you cannot have the same people, places, and things. And you have to learn to reprogram your mind. And that's what these groups they're created for. They're created to help you with that.
It does. It takes that little community and that support system. That's really the key, because otherwise you're going to fall right back into it. All right. Well, thanks so much, and you have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
You as well. Thanks so much, Steve. God bless.
Take care.
If you're a small business owner and want to acquire 5-star Google reviews on autopilot, Backbone CRM is the platform for you. It is the review and messaging platform for local business. It not only will get you your reviews on autopilot, it makes it easier to convert leads, message customers, get paid all in one place. Not only that, but Backbone will allow you to convert more website visitors into leads and more sales conversations with web chat. You can manage your messages with a single inbox for text, Facebook message, Google messages, web chats, email, and a whole other slew of social platforms. It'll also give you the opportunity, if you miss a call, to automatically text back. So when you're away, Backbone will follow up via text so you never lose another customer. You can grow your audience and know where each and every lead is coming from. Backbone is the all-in-one place platform to get you more leads and customers and Google reviews on autopilot. In fact, one of our clients that we onboarded last week, the day after we launched their company with Backbone, they received 5-star Google reviews the very next day, and they all came in within a 25-minute span. They were blown away. So if you're not afraid of getting more customers to your business, check out the short demo video at www.backbonecrm.io. That's backbonecrm.io, or you can give us a call at 888-668-5338.